Hey everybody, do me a favor if you can let me know if you're finding me on shorts or if you're finding me on regular whatever. There's this new thing, dual streaming, and I tried that earlier, dual streaming, and unfortunately, let me know if you can even hear me. But then by dual streaming, I was getting nobody. No one was notified, nothing at all. I didn't give it a whole lot of time, but then I shut it down and I'm doing the shorts version stream only, and I think it's showing up in shorts only, but then it notifies people. All these platforms are total shit. I'm really getting tired of them all. But anywho, I am starting early tonight, and I wanted to go through some tax related stuff. And in Florida, it looks as if it might be moving forward that we're actually going to maybe eliminate property taxes. I think it's a pipe dream, but who knows? I mean, maybe it is possible. We'll have to see what happens. But I wanted to play this guy. I forget his name now, but he does a really good job of focusing on it in the state of Florida. I'm going to play his video and kind of go through analysis on it, and then also go through what the Massachusetts are doing. Instead of eliminating taxes, they're going to tax you for driving. So it's a real nice comparison to make between the two states. But once again, if you are new here, be sure to subscribe. Check us out. Let me know if you can hear me. I'm assuming you can. And we will go forward.
There's a huge announcement in Florida's war on property taxes. DeSantis just launched phase 2 of his plan to blow the lid off how your money's being wasted. And now he's aiming at a part of the budget almost nobody talks about. But it's where a huge chunk of your property taxes go. For years, nobody's been watching the books, but now DeSantis and the boys are kicking down doors to stop the bleeding and expose the waste, the fraud, and the abuse. In this video, I'll show you how phase 2 is scaring the hell out of Democrats and Republicans, why local politicians are sweating bullets, and how this will finally blow the door wide open to ending property taxes in Florida. Let's jump.
And before we get into it, a lot of these local politicians are saying, "Oh, we need this money for fire and police." Well, it's obvious that you don't need as much money in taxes that you're collecting from people for fire and police. What you're doing is you have these pet projects. Every time you see in the news that there's another mayor or somebody or county commissioner, whatever it is, that's painting the street for LGBTQ or some other pet project that they're spending money on. That's the problem. The problem is all the money that they're taking from the taxpayers and then spending it on things that they want to spend it on instead of the bare necessities.
Jump in. So here's what's actually happening. DeSantis wants to end property taxes on all homestead homes in Florida. And to do that, he just handed the keys to Florida's finances to Blaise Ingoglia. He's now the state CFO and runs a new watchdog agency called FAFO. Yeah, the name's real. The Florida Agency for Fiscal Oversight. And his job, expose every single place your property tax money is being wasted. And Blaise came out swinging. Phase 1 of their plan to end property taxes was to dig through local and county budgets. And he's already found over $1.6 billion in wasteful spending. And get this, he's not even close to done. Some counties have cranked up spending by more than 50% in just 5 years. That's why your property taxes keep going up.
It's insane.
It's not inflation, it's bloated budgets and zero accountability. Now here's the crazy part. If counties just cut the waste, we wouldn't even need property taxes on homestead homes. Everything could still get funded and you'd actually own your home, not rent it from the government.
But you'll be lied to by all these politicians and say that's not true.
Blaise isn't stopping at counties. Phase 2 just launched, and now he's going after the part of your tax bill nobody ever talks about.
And the answer is yes, we are going to start looking at school boards. I will tell you that my office has had a conversation with stakeholders and people at DOE and coming up with a methodology on how we can quantify and qualify the growth in school budgets relative to the population that they serve, which are the actual students.
And this is the part that pisses me off more than anything in the world. I don't have kids in school, never have had kids in school, and I'm still paying for these kids to go to school. And then on top of that, you're paying for illegal immigrants' kids to go to school as well, because by law, they have to go to school, they have to get an education. So you, as a taxpayer, are forced to pay for that. Now, it's about time that somebody comes in and starts saying, okay, no, we're not going to do that anymore. Or we're going to start peeling that back.
I will tell you that some of the information that I have seen is that the school districts are some of the most wasteful spenders in government. And they also make up some of the largest portion of your property tax bill.
So here's how it works. When you pay your property taxes each year, that money gets split up. Some goes to the county, some to the city, but a huge chunk, usually the biggest, goes straight to your local school board. They set what's called a millage rate, which is just a fancy way of saying how much of your home's value they get to tax you on. That's how they fund schools. Sounds fine, right? But here's the truth. School boards get to set their own tax rates and budgets with almost no transparency. Millions go out the door for consultants, bloated programs, admin salaries, shady contracts, and good luck getting a real breakdown. They just tell you it's for the kids and hope you don't look too close. And let's be real. These aren't financial experts, accountants, or money managers handling the budget. They're regular people who want a popularity contest to get on the school board. Most of them mean well, but I bet a lot can't even balance their own checkbook. So now Blaze and DeSantis are shining a spotlight on school board budgets. And guess what? Local and state politicians are freaking out. Because once those audits show how much money's being wasted, just like the counties, there's no way they can keep selling the lie that property taxes are still necessary. That's when everything flips. That's the path to ending property taxes in Florida, and it starts with school board budgets. And this isn't just a Florida problem. School boards are ripping off taxpayers all across the country, and people are finally waking up.
Despite having some of the highest taxes in New Jersey, an average of more than $22,000 a year, the school system is short $19.6 million, and officials do not know where the deficit came from. The first solution put forward was a vote to raise property taxes to cover the current school year. But a judge found the ballot questions so confusing, the judge canceled the vote.
They lost $20 million and want to raise taxes.
And that's exactly what I think a lot of politicians are going to try and pull in Florida, is they're going to make it incredibly confusing for the voter. Because if they do put it on the ballot, they're going to make it confusing enough to where the vote somehow falls apart, and they're going to say, see, everybody voted it down. So this is where we all have to be careful with this, because they are going to play games and they're going to try and keep this from happening.
To cover it, somebody should go to jail. In Chicago, they didn't just waste money, they took tax dollars and went on vacation. According to an article in Illinois Policy, Chicago Public Schools dropped $23.6 million on travel. One teacher took a 7-day trip to a luxury Hawaiian resort, $4,700 for a 4-day seminar.
It's unbelievable.
That wasn't a one-off. Staff were stretching their trips past the conference dates to squeeze in more fun, all on the taxpayer dime. In 2024, one school dropped $50,000 to send 24 employees to a conference in Las Vegas. But that was just the beginning. A vendor started hosting seminars there, and word got out fast. Over 600 staffers signed up. The district blew $1.5 million putting them up in 4- and 5-star hotels on the Strip at over $400 a night. But when that same seminar was offered back home in Chicago, almost no one showed up. Shocker. It gets worse. CPS spent $142,000 sending staff from 8 schools overseas, Finland, Estonia, Egypt, South Africa, for educational tours that somehow included hot air balloon rides, camel rides, game parks, and bazaars. Of the 15 international trips, 12 weren't even approved. One was flat out denied, and they still went. And while CPS staff were riding camels and sipping cocktails, back home, only 2 in 5 students could read at grade level. Just 1 in 4 were passing math. This is exactly the kind of crap FAFO was built to expose. Taxpayers aren't signing up to fund Instagram vacations, but Chicago wasn't alone, and this next district is even crazier. Take a look at Newark, New Jersey.
Big surprise, Newark.
GOP lawmakers demanding an investigation into the district's $1.5 billion budget after they blew $17.5 million on an AI security system and $44,000 on a fun day for staff. And that's just the stuff they found. These school boards, they're out of control, wasting your money like it means nothing. And if you think Florida's any different, just wait. Let me show you what Broward County School Board's been up to. Let's rewind 3 years because they got caught red-handed.
A picture-perfect setting. Who wouldn't want to spend 3 days at a Ritz-Carlton, especially if it's you and the taxpayer who's picking up the bill? A $100,000 bill to be exact, enough to pay the average annual salary of 2 Broward County teachers.
Yeah, Broward schools spent that on a weekend retreat for administrators.
When the spending could have paid for 2 full-time teacher salaries.
And by the way, for those of you who don't know Florida and politics, most of Florida now is red, but in Broward County and those areas, it's blue. So of course, what happens is it's not necessarily. There's some counties in Florida that definitely have questionable spending that are red, but the vast majority, of course, are blue. And you're seeing everything playing out the same in Minneapolis and across Minnesota and other blue states, where there's just so much fraud, so in just deep amounts of fraud, trillions probably upon trillions of money that's been taxpayer money that's just been wasted. And think about all the printing that we've had to do, all of the inflation, all of the things in order to have to deal with everything that's going on. And then you add all of this fraud into it. And it's really, like I said, more and more people now. That's why I think you're seeing more politicians, more sort of farther right, more extreme politicians who are going to be running for office are gaining more popularity.
You know you're in trouble.
Talk of the budget bogged down by what some perceive as excessive spending after about 180 administrators, including principals and assistants, attended a 3-day retreat in late July at the luxurious Naples Ritz-Carlton Golf Resort, costing taxpayers an estimated $100,000.
When it starts with a golf tournament, there's swag bags, there's dominoes, there's a day at the pool, there's a glow party, and then in the midst of it was what first appeared to be 2.5 to 3 hours of professional development.
I bet you're not a local politician and you don't sit on a school board, but you got enough common sense to know this is a bad idea. Am I right? But this was probably just a one-time thing. They learned their lesson, right? Well, maybe not. In 2025, the Broward County School Board approved a $2.6 million lease with a nonprofit called Handy to rent office space for about 75 district staff, even though the district was already staring down a $77 million budget shortfall. School administrators couldn't even explain why they were spending over $500,000 a year for 5 years to house facility employees when they had vacant classrooms they could have converted into offices. After public backlash, the board voted in November 2025 to cancel the deal. But by then, they'd already burned through $275,000 in rent and deposits and dropped another $88,000.
And it's not their money, so they don't care.
Upgrades. And the fallout? A lawsuit. A board member calling it a total mistake. And the district's chief operations officer
Look at that.
resigned
There you
after
go.
getting grilled over this lease. And a bunch of other failures.
Big surprise.
But hold on, we're not done with Broward yet. This one's outrageous. Back in 2022, voters agreed to tax themselves to help underpaid teachers. Not administrators, not paper pushers, teachers. Everyone thought they were doing the right thing. But then, summer of 2024, the board pulled a fast one. They rewrote the rules and quietly expanded the payout list. Suddenly, staff already making 6 figures were getting bonuses meant for underpaid teachers. Taxpayer money meant for classrooms was getting funneled to top-level administrators, the very people it wasn't intended for. Parents were furious, and even some board members said it was a slap in the face. And they were right. It was a bait and switch. Eventually, the board backed off and killed the bonuses. But the damage, already done. The trust is gone. Voters stepped up to help teachers, and the board used it to line the pockets of their friends at the top. This is the kind of reckless spending that drives taxpayers nuts. School boards making big money decisions with zero accountability. And now, FAFO's watching. And here's why auditing school boards is the move that blows this whole thing wide open. You've been sold the biggest lie about property taxes in Florida, that lawmakers are trying to get rid of them. They're not. They're actually fighting DeSantis every step of the way.
Yep.
Republicans and Democrats both.
Yep.
And what they've cooked up is one giant scam. They're out here saying, we're giving voters a menu of options, please. They dropped 7 new joint resolutions.
This is really important because this is where what I was saying earlier, where they're going to try and trick you into just simply not voting for it or voting it down.
In the Florida House that they claim will bring property tax relief, but it's complete BS. Not a single one of those proposals eliminates the school portion of your property tax bill. which, by the way, is often the biggest part. Here's how it works. 4 of these 7 House proposals are already being fast-tracked for a floor vote and a spot on the 2026 ballot. The rest are just sitting in the pipeline. They're calling that a menu. It's not, it's a mess. And here's the sneaky part that makes sure nothing actually passes. See, to actually reform property taxes, you need a joint resolution. That means voters get to decide, and if it passes, it changes the state constitution. But here's the trick. Every single one of these resolutions needs 60% of the vote to pass. That's a supermajority. Even a great bill would have a tough time hitting that. So what do politicians do when they don't want anything to pass, but they want to pretend they're actually doing something? They flood the ballot. Let me show you what I mean. Say I take 100 people to Starbucks and say, hey, I'm buying everyone a coffee, but there's only one option, an Americano, because I love Americanos. Now there's a rule. 60 out of 100 people have to say yes. If they do, boom, everyone gets a free Americano. That's 60% of the vote. Simple. But now, let's change it. This time, I give them 5 drink options. Pumpkin spice latte, espresso, cafe latte, Americano, and a cappuccino.
Never gonna hit the 60.
60 people have to agree on one drink. Not 60 total votes, 60 for one drink. What happens? Chaos. Some want pumpkin spice, others want espresso, a few stick with the Americano. Now,
It's kind of genius when you think
30
about it.
here, 20 there, 15 over there. No single drink gets 60%. And just like that, nobody gets anything. That's exactly what the Florida legislature is doing. They're flooding the ballot with competing property tax proposals.
And think about this. You have James Fishback that's running in Florida, and I'm going to be interviewing him in February. And Byron Donalds wants to have this. Where he doesn't want the school board spending or taxes to be eliminated. And I don't know if James Fishback has said anything, but I can almost guarantee you that he wants to do this. So it's going to be a very important governor's race in the state of Florida.
Knowing full well, none of them are going to hit 60%. So they're all going to fail and nothing changes. Then they'll say, well, we tried, but you didn't vote for it. Don't fall for it. This isn't a menu. It's a trap, and it's built to fail. They need to put one strong plan on the ballot. Total elimination of property taxes on homestead homes. That's it. But instead, they're dumping a bunch of conflicting proposals on purpose, because if they split the vote, nothing passes. And they get to keep the gravy train rolling. This isn't just about waste, it's about proof. School boards live off your property taxes, and once FAFO exposes how bloated and reckless their budgets really are, there's no excuse left. It proves we can finally end property taxes on homestead homes in Florida. And to be clear, we're not saying schools get zero funding. School boards are still going to get property tax money from commercial properties. Businesses, apartment buildings, restaurants, Airbnbs, second homes, they're still on the hook. But your home? That should be off limits. You shouldn't be paying rent to the government just to live in a house you already bought. The one reason we haven't done it yet? Politicians, local and state, Republicans and Democrats, they all love spending your money. Nobody wants to protect it. That's why they fought DeSantis and Blaze on this every step of the way. But those days are numbered. The waste is too big to ignore. FAFO is pulling back the curtain, showing you exactly how much is being burned behind closed doors. And when the numbers come out, there's no going back. We don't need to raise taxes. We don't need more programs. We need to cut the waste and let Floridians keep what they've earned, because this is your money, not theirs. DeSantis, Blaze, FAFO, and Florida taxpayers have had enough. The era of blowing tax dollars like you're at the strip club is over. The party's done. It's time for real accountability, and it starts right here. So what happens next? Let's not just stop with phase 2. Let's start phase 3. Every school board, county, and city budget in Florida should be online, searchable, and trackable down to the last dollar.
Yep.
Total transparency. No excuses. You should be able to pull up a website and see exactly where your money's going. Every contract, every program, every dollar. If they spend it, we should see it. Because when taxpayers have the receipts, the games stop. And that's how we win. And this isn't the only trick DeSantis has up his sleeve to protect taxpayers. Click here to learn why Florida is about to steal billions from California. They just introduced a brand new tax, and if it catches on, it won't stop there. Other states will jump on it fast, and retirees and people on fixed incomes are going to get crushed. Click here, and I'll see you.
So there you go. And this is why DeSantis has really done a good job, and even things are starting to turn around, which I thought would not when it comes to insurance. I think we've had a major insurance crisis in the state of Florida. I think those things are finally turning around. But it's amazing to me how these politicians in Florida are fighting so hard. I mean, it's not a surprise, but to try and keep that gravy train going, and how they will sit there and just lie straight to your face and tell you, well, this money is for the school kids, when you see the wasteful spending that's going on. And I think what's happening now is that people are struggling so much financially that it's unavoidable now to where people they're focusing in on things that, especially taxes, that this money is being taken away from them, and it's being wasted by, these Somalians, illegal immigrants, people in Broward County. And you can tell by the looks of them when you see the videos and the pictures of who these people are. It's obviously not a surprise of who they are and who's getting away with this. But people also, not only does it need to change, but these people need to go to jail. So people in Minneapolis, they need to go to jail. People in Broward County and all these different counties that are doing this stuff, they need to be held accountable by going to jail. If they don't, it's never really going to stop. Now, this video is kind of the opposite. So now you have Massachusetts, where you have a lesbian governor who, when in Shakespeare's Hamlet, there's a saying that says there's something rotten in the state of Denmark. And when you look at some of these people who are elected, DeSantis makes sense, and it's understandable to see people coming to the state of Florida and it's turning red, and DeSantis being the governor, winning twice, makes sense. But then when you see somebody like this particular governor, and what is her name? Martha. No, it's not Martha. It's Maura Healey. Maura Healey, and then also the mayor of Boston. You look at this and you go, there's something just simply not right about this. There's something that's seriously wrong and odd about how these particular people get in office. But this tax should anger everyone across the country, not just simply people who are living in the state of Massachusetts, but across the country. This is, and I didn't watch the entire thing, so there might be more.
That aims to cut down on the number of miles people drive in their personal cars across the state is one step closer to reaching the governor's desk.
So across this country, we have seen the Democratic Party at the state, local, and even the federal level adopt the language of affordability. Each and every Democrat are really trying to go out there and emphasize to their voters that they're the party of lowering costs. They're the party of making things more affordable for average Americans. But the thing is, even if you change up yourself rhetorically, if you don't actually change what you're advocating for in terms of policy, you're not actually for affordable lives for everyday Americans. And a perfect example of this is the state of Massachusetts, which already is one of the highest tax states in the union. A couple of years ago, they actually passed via ballot initiative a tax on the rich in order to, again, make things more affordable in the state of Massachusetts.
Massachusetts voters approving a tax hike on high earners. That's going to be a 4% surtax on those making more than $1 million a year. That brings their top rate to 9%.
And don't get me wrong, I'm okay with raising taxes. And I think a lot of people who make millions of dollars would be okay. And a lot of them have said, I'm okay with being taxed. So that's something really a different subject and a different discussion to have. But these taxes, and most of the taxes that are levied, are the ones that affect and abuse the middle class taxpayer.
It marks the first change to that state's flat tax in over a century. The added revenue is going to go to education, roads, and bridges.
However, they have decided that they're going to come up with a new method in order to make transportation more free and more affordable for each and every one of their state residents. And of course, that new method is a tax on the miles driven on your personal vehicle. So the way that they're going to make transportation more affordable for you in the state of Massachusetts is by taxing transportation to make it less affordable for you in the state of Massachusetts. And
makes sense, doesn't it?
We're going to talk about today, because in this particular state, they actually proposed this type of tax 9 years.
There's a pattern of behavior, by the way, when you see what's going on in Minnesota and you see this type of thing going on in Massachusetts. When you have these lesbians and people like this that that are in these positions. Once again, when I say there's something rotten in them, there's something wrong. There's a mental illness that's going on. And when you do things like this, that is a major problem. And you see the violence and you see the vitriol coming from these people, like the two people that, or the one woman who tried to run over the ICE officer, is that you have this just anger and this craziness of these people, and they're trying to punish and destroy and kill everyone they possibly can that's in their path. And what's unbelievable to me is that in the state of Massachusetts, you look at the history of how these people are, or who is being elected, and it's the same people. And so you can't tell me that there's not something going on with the elections there. Yeah, I mean, that's a good question, Joseph. Now, so if I drive into Massachusetts, you're going to charge me a tax? I mean, how's that going to work? And how is it fair if you just tax your own, and I don't know if this guy's going to get into it or not, but you're going to tax your own state drivers, but you're not going to tax anybody else? How many out-of-state drivers, in New England are coming in and out of Massachusetts? I mean, that's an interesting question and a good question.
Years ago, people rejected it resoundingly, but the way that they're trying to pass it now at this very moment is by labeling this tax somehow freedom of transportation. No, I'm not kidding about that.
That's what, and they lie about it on top of it all.
Policy that Massachusetts residents resoundingly rejected, and it will be a disaster in every possible way. In addition to that, I will also point out that we already have a tax basically on miles driven in this country. It is called the gas tax at the federal level. States have their own gas tax as well. But this particular tax is far more intrusive. It's far more invasive in your day-to-day life as it actually tracks the miles that you drive. It's meant to get around you buying a car that's more fuel efficient or an electric car. And this is because it is motivated by the ideology of hating people's ability to own their own personal vehicle. And this is what we're going to talk about today. But before we do, I want to thank everybody who supports this channel via actualjusticewarrior.com/join.
Give me the money. Give me the money, okay?
There's too many cars on the roads. Traffic in Boston has become terrible.
An effort to reduce the number of statewide driving miles is advancing on Beacon Hill, and the bill that focuses on how much people drive is bringing both praise and criticism.
It just seems like the wrong way to approach things. Everybody's doing their best. They have to drive to get to work.
So they interview regular, ordinary residents of the state of Massachusetts.
There's an example. Like, there's a Casper milk toast, and I don't know. I always thought that Massachusetts was a tough state, especially parts of Boston. But it's just like, you scratch your head and you go, "Are you that clueless? Like, you should be upset." I'm upset about it, and I don't even live there. I mean, I'd be tearing out my hair, and I don't even have any hair to tear out. That somebody like that is going you're going to tax me even more, and you're going to insult me even more and abuse me even more by taxing me because I drive.
And they have regular, ordinary takes on these particular policies, like this guy right here who says it seems like it appears that this is just the wrong way in order to do this.
No shit, it is.
It seems like people have to drive to work each and every day, and for whatever reason, the folks in our state capital just don't like us very much, and they're trying to raise taxes
you think?
upon us.
But you keep voting for them.
It actually goes further than that, because one of the things that we are told, a myth that is often promulgated by people on the left wing, is that if you don't have high income taxes, those income tax free states that are absolutely disgusting in every possible way, what you're ultimately going to end up with are taxes that are regressive, more fines and fees. However, in my experience, when examining the various states and their tax models, what you actually end up discovering is that if you have high income taxes, if they get what they want in terms of going after the evil, bad, rich people, guess what? The fees end up increasing anyway. You end up with both, and Massachusetts is is a perfect example of that, because a couple of years ago, via ballot initiative, they passed what they call a millionaire's tax. And in this particular tax, they added an additional 4% surcharge to incomes exceeding a certain threshold. It was passed via ballot initiative and implemented in 2022. And yet, a couple of years later, even though they're running on affordability, this particular amendment is snuck into this bill.
The Freedom to Move Act centers around bringing Massachusetts in line with its climate mandates. Supporters say the transportation sector accounts for the greatest share of carbon emissions in the state.
So when I say that they're trying to sneak in this new tax, this is exactly what I mean. They proposed a bill calling it the Freedom to Move Act. However, they admit to your face that this is about meeting arbitrary climate goals that the state of Massachusetts set for itself.
Which, first of all, are failures. The electric cars you're starting to see now, and everything the left does is a failure. Everything they touch is a failure. And it's hard to have sympathy for the taxpayers or the people that live in Massachusetts because they continue to vote for the same people, the same crazy batshit lunatics that insist. I mean, they were wrong about COVID. I mean, that's the number one thing. I mean, you didn't get that right, but you're still in office. And you didn't get like I said, the electric cars have been a miserable failure. There's tons of electric cars that are not being sold. And so what you're going to continue to do now is you're going to continue to try and push this climate agenda and make people pay taxes because, like, once again, it's failed. Then you're trying to push it on people.
That it could easily avoid if it does not like the taxation policies that are required to get there. However, they've decided that not only do they want the taxes, and not only do they want to sacrifice you to the gods of global warming, but in addition to that, they want to declare war on your freedom of movement in order to force you into public transportation. And then they bring up this lobbyist guy who wrote an op-ed that we're going to go over in just a little bit to tell you that you don't need to worry about this personal tax on your personal vehicle that is meant to deter you from driving and limit you in that way, limit your freedom of movement, because it's not about you personally and it's not about your personal vehicle.
It's not about individuals and how much you're driving. It's about the investments that the state makes in our infrastructure.
The bill would establish a new council to find ways to make public transportation more accessible, looking at boosting options like trains, buses, and
there you go. The guy's right. It's to push you onto public transportation. And this Shen guy who the hell is this guy? Who the hell are you making decisions for the people of the state of Massachusetts?
Bike lanes.
So I said it before and I'll say it again. Anytime you hear the word investment in terms of government spending, you are about to be robbed blind, because the government does not invest money. They spend money on their pet projects, on their preferences. They do so at the expense of you. And investments typically actually are looking to, create a sector that will grow in the future. However, government expenditures are typically looking to create programs that can hire more people, so you create more government jobs, and those people can vote for more government spending and more government jobs. It's quite literally an anti-investment. In this particular case, the goal of the council that will sit above you in the state of Massachusetts that they're trying to set up is to figure out ways to block you from your preferred transportation method in order to have more quote-unquote investments, aka government spending, in public transportation networks. And by the way, this obviously very heavily disadvantages rural residents of the state of Massachusetts, but it's okay because you have this transportation lobbyist right here saying that we've considered that. We understand that a lot of rural residents are less mobile, but we have a solution for that. We're going to charge those people significantly more money if they actually want to get around, but we'll call it freedom of movement, so that way you can feel good about it. Also, we may throw you a bus line here or there. And that's basically the point of this article that was written by Kevin X. Shen, where he talks about repeatedly all the different ways that you have transportation insecurity, transportation inequality. Again, when you have people in the Democratic Party talking about insecurity in some regard or inequality, typically this is a code word for how they're going to restrict your freedom further. And throughout the course of this, he talks about 19% of people feel insecure about their transportation. They feel like it's already unaffordable, yet somehow the solution to that is to tax transportation even more. Somehow the solution of that is to put up this committee of wise elders to sit above you and determine how much you're able to drive in the state of Massachusetts, how you're going to be charged for driving your personal vehicle in the state of Massachusetts. And in addition to that, of course, they're going to say, don't worry about it. We're going to put in a bus lane in rural Massachusetts because that will 100% work. We are going to spend a ton of money on these rail projects, which again, in certain circumstances, I'm not against public transportation. Let me be clear about that. However, the way that the government in the United States of America spends money on these projects, the inflated costs, the absolute boondoggles that we see time and time again, not just represented by California's high-speed rail or the Second Avenue line in New York City or the LIRR Grand Central extension in New York City, or of course the Hudson Yard Station in New York City. These are all insane projects that overrun immensely. And by the way, the last 3 rail projects that I talked about are the 3 most expensive projects per mile in the history of the world in terms of underground rail, so subway service.
It's completely out of touch with reality. There's so many people in Massachusetts who have to drive because it's a way of life.
Paul Craney, executive director of the Massachusetts Fiscal Alliance, believes the bill doesn't consider people in rural and some suburban communities.
If you live in Boston and you want to ride the train or public transportation, that's good for you. But don't force this on the rest of the state.
So of course you have a guy pointing out the obvious, which is if you're in the city of Boston, which has their own transit system, you should take the transit system because that is more convenient there. But obviously the entire state of Massachusetts is not like the cities. It's not like the city of Boston. Driving is a necessity. And again, charging people more for that is absolutely disaster. But then we get, of course, the bait and switch, because I told you about this proposal 9 years ago, which obviously was meant to lead to a tax. Let me play you the particular video from the local news from back then so you can understand what's going on.
And some state lawmakers want to tax drivers based on how many miles they drive. It's called the distance-driven tax, and Governor Baker said he is against it. A Senate amendment would require Massachusetts to apply for federal funding to research a tax on drivers based on the number of miles they travel. State Representative John Vilas asked the governor to veto it. He said such a tax would unfairly burden drivers.
Now, as you heard right there, it was originally initially pushed as a bill in order to ask the federal government for grant money in order to study the most effective way in order to render this tax, which again is the precursor of the new tax. You're basically spending money on a committee that will no longer exist, but for them getting some kind of revenue generation, they're supposed to come up with a study to prove it to the general public that it's absolutely crucial. And guess what? That ended up failing 9 years ago, but it's brought back under the same thing, which is, oh, we're just asking questions. Basically, they got Candace Owens on this. We're just going to study the issue, even though we all understand where this is going. They're specifically looking to limit the mileage of Massachusetts residents, the per person mileage in your personal vehicle, in order to make transportation amazing in the state. And again, this is the same framework that they use in order to try to get money for a study 9 years ago to look into the idea of this driving tax.
A statement from the bill's sponsor, Senator Cynthia Stone Cream, says, quote, "It does not in any way limit people's choices about how to get around. It does."
Democrat Senate Majority Leader Cream. I mean, see, and this is somebody who should be shamed. This is somebody who should be impeached. Somebody who should never be in politics. And this is the problem, is that more and more people are getting angry about, about the fact that there are even women in politics, period, because of stuff like this. It's maddening. It needs to stop. And how dare this person say that they're going to tax somebody for driving? It's sickening.
Not impose fines, penalties, or taxes on drivers. In fact, it gives people more choices.
No, it doesn't.
The bill that's been referred to
and then they lie
Ways
about
and
it.
Means Committee would require MassDOT to set goals for reducing the number of statewide driving miles. It does not list any specific numbers on how many driving miles per person would be reduced.
Now, 9 years ago in the state of Massachusetts, residents were smart enough to take that bill, examine it, and do the following with it.
No, we're not doing that.
That's embarrassing.
So yeah, you definitely 100% should not believe this woman who's like, oh, we're just looking for a way to give you more choices. Remember, it's called the Transportation Freedom Act, even though, again, we're setting up a commission to do a study to figure out a way to limit you from driving, all in the name of your own personal freedom, which we are restricting with the Freedom of Choice in Transportation Act, or whatever stupid Orwellian name that they're giving this. And I also want to point out something that people really need to genuinely understand, internalize, and take forward with them whenever they're talking about politics. Anytime there's a proposal for a new type of tax, not an increase on current existing taxes that are already there, but a new type of tax, you need to reject that immediately. You need to say, no, absolutely not. No way, we're not doing that, because every single new tax proposal comes in exactly the same. They promise that it's only going to be on a certain segment of the population, or it's only going to be a low amount, and we're going to raise that money for a good cause. But the thing is, once they implement that new tax, once they establish the legal framework for that new tax, there is no limitation on what anybody in the future can do to raise it. So even if they propose, like they did with the congestion tax in New York City, a modest tax on driving in this particular area, make no mistake about it, once that ends up clearing the courts, if they ultimately win that court battle, they will then push that tax up, as they did with the tolls on roads and bridges, and as they do with everything. I mean, there's no greater example of this than the income tax, which originally was 1 to 2% on just the top 1 to 2%, and in a generation, Americans were having money withheld from their paycheck, nearly half of their money at a federal level. We had two direct unapportioned income taxes in the payroll tax and the federal income tax, and that's because there are no guardrails once you establish the legal framework for this kind of taxation. So no, absolutely not. You need to
absolutely
reject it.
Criminal.
You also need to look Massachusetts legislators straight in the face and say, you set these arbitrary climate goals, then you're failing by your own metrics, so now you're trying to do a thing where you're like, oh, well, we need taxes, otherwise we're not following the law that you could easily change, and just tell them to change it. But you know what? Those are just my thoughts. I want to know what you guys think down in the comments below, as per usual.
Let me know what you guys think. This guy did a great job on explaining it. And, and again, it's a compare and contrast between what's going on in Florida. You see one governor who's doing everything he can to stop corruption within the state government. And here you have obvious corruption within the state government in Massachusetts, where they're trying to lie to their constituents and say that this is actually a good thing, when obviously it's not. So one more thing, and then I'm going to call it a night. We had quite a few. I mean, this is a pretty crazy subject, obviously, with the ICE crackdown in Minnesota. And once again, when it comes to trying to hold people accountable, those who broke the law, those who are helping people break the law, are accomplices in state government. And we've seen Tim Walz has now gotten out of his, there's stepping aside. He's not going to be running for re-election. And it's quite obvious why, that Nick Shirley has exposed him. Now, there's a lot of arguments where people are saying that, a lot of this stuff was already well known, and it's kind of odd that all of a sudden it's being brought up now. So this Somali daycare fraud has been going on for quite some time, and now all of a sudden, Nick Shirley comes out of nowhere, and he's the guy that's exposing it all. But anyway, related to, this huge controversy, which really shouldn't be a controversy, of this good broad who decided to take it upon herself and her wife, so-called wife, to physically and verbally abuse federal law enforcement. And got to the point where she drove her vehicle into an ICE agent who opened fire on her and killed her. And so it comes out today that he apparently did sustain injuries that were pretty severe. And it's amazing to me how there are people on the internet saying it wasn't a big deal. It was just he barely touched the guy with the car. He shouldn't have shot her. All that stuff. But the problem is that leading all the way up to that incident, there were a series of actions that were taken to lead to that point. And really, no matter what anybody says, you have an ideological kind of divide. You have these people who, the way they look at it is you cannot remove these people from the country, and that is their job. They are actually getting paid to keep this from happening. So, of course, this kind of stuff is going to happen. But this one last video I'm going to play is, here's one more example of even the immigrants themselves, and this is one of many, who have decided to break into the country and steal whatever they can from America. And then when they are being held accountable and being arrested by ICE, they resist arrest with violence, tremendous violence. So here you go.
Come out of the car. Come out of the car. Open the window. He's in proceedings. He's good to go. Let me get my plate. Lower the window. Watch out behind you. Watch out.
Almost hits another officer.
Watch out in front of you. Watch out in front.
Look at this. Now he's trying to push the car with his car. Rams into another officer's car.
Cut it off. Cut it off. Now. Cut it off. Turn off the car. Cut the car. Cut off. Come out of the car. Come out of the car. Come out. Now.
All right, here with reaction, ICE Director Todd Lyons. Todd, I mean, if that doesn't educate the public about these ramming incidents, I don't know what else will, on top of what happened. Previously we had...
It doesn't matter about educating anyone. They're the people who don't want this stuff to happen. You're not going to convince them, because what they are, they're enemies of the state. They want the takeover of the government to make it communist. They want these people to stay in this country. And when somebody like this who comes in illegally, it's not only now do they've taken so many resources like these states with their taxes and everything else, but then on top of it, they're doing everything they possibly can to pay protesters to violently oppose what people voted for. So people voted for overwhelmingly to have these people deported. And then what you have is you have the communist left that are actually being paid. And what angers me about Donald Trump is he's just not doing a good enough job of getting the people that are paying for this and funding this and putting them in jail. And hopefully, I think at some point he's probably going to do that. But it's just gone on too long. These people have been getting away with this. Like Tim Walz, for example. I mean, he's dropping out of the race because he knows, he's dead to rights. They found him. They know that he's the main reason why all this stuff is going on. And so he has to drop out of the race, but he should also be investigated, and he should also be tried for his involvement in letting it happen for so many years.
Now have 3 in recent days. Very dangerous now. Do you tie a lot of this danger to the rhetoric of people like Tim Walz, who compares ICE to Gestapo?
Yeah, Sean, unfortunately, when we hear elected officials calling upon individuals to impede or obstruct, ICE law enforcement operations nationwide, you're going to see incidents like this. And that was a video you're probably not going to see on mainstream media, right? That
What's up, Walter?
Shows exactly what's happening. You saw the officers and agents attempting to apprehend a criminally illegal alien, and there they are using their weapon, using their car as a weapon.
As a weapon, yeah.
The lead vehicle, the ICE vehicle, the gray one.
And if you support the violence against ICE, you are a terrorist. You are a criminal. You are a supporter of terrorism and criminal activity. You are a supporter of violence. And you are somebody who, for the longest time, people have just kept their mouths shut and haven't said anything about it. They don't, because they're too afraid. But there is, I don't know if I have it. I got to find it. And I'll probably show it tomorrow. But a bunch of lefties were going after one guy, and he laid every single one of them out. He probably knocked out like 4 of them. So these are people who are just, they're cowards. But still at the same time, you get them behind the wheel of a car or whatever, and they're just violent lunatics. I mean, you go all the way back to the 60s with Acorn and all of the violent leftists back then, the firebombing and everything else. They're all violent lunatics.
That was struck, that officer had to go to the hospital with neck injuries. And every day, Sean, this is what the men and women of ICE are facing. It's constant impediments, constant attacks like this. And, it's not safe for my folks. It's not safe for the public. It really needs to stop.
They got to do something about it. They have to start getting more aggressive. Not get less aggressive, get more aggressive.
What do you make of these groups that have instructions on how to confront and basically fight with ICE agents? They call it a micro antifada, and I can go into all the details of it. I'm sure you're closely aware of it. But we're talking about a strategy laid out by groups of people to make your jobs harder and obstruct justice. Should those people be arrested?
100%, Sean. Any law enforcement officer will tell you, it's a constitutional right, go out there and protest. But when you have organized criminal gangs, which these are, that are organizing these groups to, again, impede or obstruct law enforcement operations, lawful law enforcement agents, enacting the laws that Congress has written, that's a criminal act. And I will tell you that Homeland Security investigations, my folks, the FBI, we're investigating these, and people are going to be held accountable. Because you can't organize groups to go out and impede law enforcement. It's a criminal act, and we have to act swiftly to cause this from spreading.
Do you have a response to Philadelphia's DA threatening to prosecute ICE agents, which, by the way, is not constitutional? But putting that aside, do you have a response for that DA?
Sean, what I'll say is the men and women of ICE, the men and women of ERO, the men and women of HSI, they're not committing any crimes. So he doesn't have to worry about arresting any of my folks, because what we're doing is we're enforcing the law. We are out there every day making this nation and his city safe again. So he shouldn't worry about the men and women of ICE. What he should worry about is the sanctuary policies that have these criminal aliens go back into his neighborhoods and commit heinous crimes like fentanyl trafficking, human trafficking, rape of a child. He should focus on those and let law enforcement do law enforcement work.
All right, Director Lyons, thank you. Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe.
Okay, so you see, more and more of these incidents of ramming the federal officers with cars, and and again, it's obvious now, and it's been obvious for a long time, but people are now waking up to what's going on. I've had enough of the violence from the left. They've just had enough of it. So Hillary Clinton decided that she was not going to, or she was going to ignore a congressional subpoena. I won't play that, but obviously, Steve Bannon and Peter Navarro, they were spectacularly arrested, hauled in front of cameras and shackles and everything else. We'll see what ends up happening to Bill and Hillary Clinton. My guess is nothing's going to happen to them. And once again, if nothing happens to them, then, it's going to be a sad state of affairs, because no one's going to be held accountable, and they're just going to continue to get away with their crimes. So anyway, that'll do it for tonight. I will be back tomorrow night. And Lloyd, you are a fag. So, but thanks for being here anyway. You're way too late. So, see you guys tomorrow.